Isn't it me being 100 years too late? But you know, every week is a fashion week. Every shower is a fashion shower.
You need the fashion shower.
And today I just wanted to do a short recap of the best shows of the last fashion month. So no Chanel, no Gucci, only the good ones. My goal on this is that in these 20 minutes or however long I will yap, you will kind of collect that information and maybe discover some brands that you might not know, might have never heard of, but you would kind of be able to see this side of fashion, which is not always in the top coverage of magazines, you know. I let myself to be a bit subjective in this, so of course, all the brands I collected here, I absolutely love myself, and I think they are the best brands in the world. I don't know how other people do that, but I have a laptop and I have my phone, and probably sometimes I will have to kind of glance at that because my head doesn't have that much storage. Also, some color, yeah, gray is a color, but maybe I'm a bit bragging because I made it myself, so, and I never wore it. Let's start with something everybody knows before we get into hard weapons. And this has to be Comme des Garçons. I find the case of Comme des Garçons and Rei Kawakubo very impressive because how many big brands do you know that don't belong to any conglomerate? So Comme des Garçons actually is owned by Rei Kawakubo, and she has voice in decision making in both business and creative part. She also has more brands under this umbrella. We will talk about them later, so I don't want to spoil anything. Basically, this tiny woman who people are scared of, I believe. I don't know, I think she's very hard to work with, but she is definitely a genius. And she never was trained as a fashion designer, and I think her approach to design is so different. And here in this collection we see sometimes it looks more like it's molded on a body rather than being tailored or sewn together. And you know, she's very often questioning these gendered clothing codes. So here too, in the beginning, and she loves to do that, we saw a lot of fabrics that are more associated with menswear, I guess, like plaid and gingham and pinstripes. And then she switched it up and we saw these very decorative, these very soft fabrics as a contrast, you know, and with a progression of a show, it kind of aligns all together and it's kind of melting in this one creation with these decorative details and these elements that we associate with menswear. These hats are also referencing her older work. These textures I already have seen in one of her exhibitions. I don't know if this covering the identity and covering the gender is a conscious decision, but it definitely can be understood like that. It leaves a lot of questions, okay, but I think it's totally fine if we cannot answer them all. At the end of the day, Rei Kawakubo hates it when she feels that she made something that is easy to understand. And she mentioned several times that she likes to start from zero, or I don't know if she likes it, but she does that. And what I mean by that, let's take we are making a suit, and this is the image we already have in our heads, what suit is, right? We have an understanding of a pattern, we have an understanding of buttoning and how sleeves are put into shoulder, and she wants to erase this from her creative process, and she just thinks of a new relationship with a body and the cloth. And by that I mean, you know, who said that we can only have two sleeves just because we have two arms, but it could be used as a design element. She likes to reference herself very often, and I also see that with this harmonica kind of layered constructions, which looks like a lot of sheets of paper. And on that note, we can take a look on her proteges. First of all, Noir Kei Ninomiya. He worked for Rei Kawakubo as a pattern maker, and this is the brand that falls under this Comme des Garçons company. We can totally see this influences he gathered while working for Rei Kawakubo, you know. But I think what makes him so different is how often he avoids traditional sewing, and basically instead he relies on laser cut elements and fabrics that are mashed together but not sewn together. And his layering is so complex, but it creates this architecture on the body. We have seen it before, but I think it happens more and more often with Kei Ninomiya. We see this theater of light. I read about it a bit, how he achieved this glowing effect, and basically he had woven the fiber optic cables into the fabric. I don't know why they use that. I tried to ask my boyfriend what it is, and then he asked me if I'm asking about internet, and clearly I wasn't. Anyways, and then they had LED controls to control the intensity and the tone of the light. So it was very complex project of engineering, and they kind of hit the batteries in the clothing. Leaving that aside, I think that this is the perfect balance between avant-garde and wearability. If you strip it down from these very technological elements, it's amazingly made clothes. It has this romanticism, this gothic aesthetic, and you know, noir because it's black. I think it is the base of his brand. Yeah, and I think this is one of the best brands on the lineup. The next protege is Junya Watanabe, who is, I would say, older brother to Kei. He was also an employee for Rokh Kawakubo. He started as a pattern maker, but then he progressed very fast and he was promoted to chief designer. And I would describe him, okay, if Kei is an architect, then Junya is engineer, because he creates these illusions with the fabric, and I would say he's an ambassador of futuristic textiles and functionality, and he often collaborates with brands like, you know, North Face and Carhartt and Oakley. And every time when I see, this is definitely my favorite designer ever, I think, and when I see his collections, I'm like, okay, this is the peak of creativity. You cannot go higher from there. And he does. It's also very strange because for men fashion week, he offered something very simple, like these lumberjack aesthetic, very Carhartt aesthetic. And now he comes up with something where his creativity just explodes. And these pyramids and these geometrical figures, I find it so interesting, and I'll tell you why. I just have to travel to this thought. So for his inspiration, he chose Jimi Hendrix because he said that he used to listen to Jimi Hendrix a lot 30 to 40 years ago when he started to work as a designer. It kind of reminded me of the time when I was a fashion design student, and one of the first tasks we had would be creating, not necessarily garments, we were just creating prototypes, but using geometrical figures. It's just basically a training of composition and proportion. It's very widely known in design schools. And I was thinking that maybe he is referring to that too, because he was talking about his start as a designer, and I am pretty sure it was his inspiration. This extreme creativity that you only let yourself when you are a student. Well, I wasn't the best designer, but some people were. And you know, like putting these wigs on a cloth, but then you would see the net of the wig, and this is the central point, or using these shoes on the shoulders. I don't believe that you can make it better. I don't believe it, but let's wait for next year. Okay, this might be unusual, but let me defend myself, okay? Marc Jacobs is not somebody who would be seen as a innovator in fashion, okay? But what makes him so different? I think our association with this name is not good, because he was a very good creative director for Louis Vuitton, but now we kind of associating him with these logo bags and perfume and stuff like that. But his designs are so silly in the best sense possible. It's kind of very artistic. It's very avant-garde. But what makes him different from, let's say, Junya Watanabe and Comme is that he is so upbeat and so positive. Because I think these two things are not always coming together. And you know, this irony, it's really nice to see a designer who doesn't take himself so serious, and this is a bit cartoonish and everything is over-exaggerated. For me, it reminds me of dresses for dolls, you know, where the shoulders are not quite sitting well and everything is too big and a bit too padded, and the pockets, they're like sticking out from the fabric. And the shoes, oh my God, I love the shoes. I think it has so much potential to be desirable. I promise you, you will see it in editorials next season so much. And it's not the first collection like this Marc Jacobs did. Look at his last one. It's also very cartoonish. So this collection, it's kind of extension of the last one. Rokh, oh my God, it's so amazing. Now I really have to take into pictures. For this collection, he chose inspiration of this mansion in Paris, and basically the mansion is crumbling and now is under restoration, and he explores this tension between fragility and construction, and you can see it in the first piece already, where something fragile is hiding something very structured. Usually we are used to the opposite, because, you know, usually we are covered with coats and, I don't know, trenches or whatever, and like underneath you would see these flowing materials, and he took completely opposite approach. Oh my God, I need comfort water. Delicious. Really not used to talking so much. And you know, you see these coats over coats over coats, and then there is something very fragile in that. And also what I want to highlight the most, you know, and I call it, it's not how he calls it, I call it that way, capsule garments, and I'm referring to capsule wardrobe also. And you know, capsule wardrobe, it's like when you have a capsule of pieces and they are going well together and are very combinable. So his garment has all these panels and all these zippers and all these buttons, and you can transform and shift it in a way that you can wear the same garments in many ways. And I find it very interesting because I think it's very hard to make something transformable but still purposeful and desirable, because I feel like a lot of these pieces that are, you know, taking pride of being transformable, they are not realistic for daily life, and I believe this one is. And I think what he's doing is very smart design. Of course, it's very beautiful. I think it's very beautiful. He also worked for Louis Vuitton and Celine and Chloe, and for me it's magnificent because I don't see this influence at all. Rokh is just something on its own completely. And I also loved this feature with this statue, with this molded female torso the model was carrying. I don't know if it was intended in that way that, you know, it would symbolize the burden of our ideals and perfection of a female body, but it also kind of intertwines with this concept of fragility and structure very well. Róisín Pierce, oh my God, maybe I'm not objective completely on this because I was blessed with invitation to her show. And you know, when you're sitting in a show, it's completely different experience. You hear the music, you see the details, you have this, I don't know, community moment where everybody has their attention of something in particular. I just found it so mesmerizing, and for me myself it was a huge discovery because I wasn't acquainted with her creative journey, and it was actually amazing to see how somebody can be a master of fabric manipulation, because almost all of her models, I don't know, maybe all actually, were partly handcrafted, you know, in the sense that they had a clusters of hand manipulated snowberries and smoked crushed velvet, pin tucking, crochet, just everything. So many textures, and everything was white. And her inspiration was because for this collection, while creating this collection, she was studying Wilson Bentley's photographs of snowflakes. And Bentley said, wait, I don't want to paraphrase it. He said that every crystal was a masterpiece of design, and when the snowflake melts, that design is lost forever. And it was a lot of this decay, this loss and grief in her collection, but it was in very nostalgic way. It wasn't dark, you know, everything was white. I know in some cultures it's color of mourning, but it was more a reminder of her fragility, very well crafted. She also had amazing collaborators. Oh my god. She had Pauline for her handbags, and then she had Stephen Jones for a headwear. Stephen Jones is a huge name, and I think maybe now in Paris he even has an exhibition of his hats. If you're in Paris, you definitely have to check it out. And for emerging designer, it means a lot. And also Rokh is a huge supporter of Roisín Pierce. And yeah, I think we have to keep an eye on this designer. I think she will go very, very long way. Magda Butrym. I don't know if I've pronounced it right, but I think so because I'm Lithuanian and she's a Polish. Also discovered this designer not a long time ago, and I really appreciate her creation. I don't see a lot of that. Maybe it's also my background talking, you know, because I'm from Lithuania and we are kind of close and we share the same historical background, and basically all the references she uses, I can totally understand it. It just calls home. Like, you know, she used these headscarves, and for me it was just a throwback to my childhood. It just reminded me of going to the market with my grandma. My grandma never wore a headscarf, but you know, the sellers would. And this pattern of roses, this is, maybe you would think there's nothing special, but there is something so Eastern about that, about this color story. Usually it's like very bright red or pink in a contrasting background of blue or green. Yeah, and it looks very, very familiar to me. Okay, even if you cannot relate to that, I think this is beautiful collection, because while she's even using the artisans from Poland, I guess, to use this craftsmanship, and she has this hand crochet Polish patterns. It looks very modern, you know, like this crochet tutu skirt or this pattern dress with a sleeve. It's perfect combination of Eastern craftsmanship, Eastern influences, and Western tailoring. I'm checking what I wrote more, and I wrote that the bag is like the Rokh dupe. I don't know, I am not a fan of the Rokh. I know the model of that bag because it's everywhere, and it seemed very similar to me, but somebody has to tell me because maybe I'm talking nonsense. And yeah, I wrote that it's also a huge influence of 80s, you know, with a structure, especially when you see the leather pieces, you can totally see this influence. It's a very small collection of 23 models. I think she's very well respected brand, but still, you know, not huge, not owned by a huge conglomerate. And I think that this collection was very coherent. And the next brand I want you to learn and know for sure, maybe there is slight, I don't know, undertone of subjectivity too, because I attended that show too. I didn't know the brand before going there. I had no expectations. And this is South Korean brand. By the way, the rise of Asian and Indian brands, it's completely another discussion, but I'm telling you. So basically they had this A to Z concept where every collection is kind of dedicated to one letter, and they explore that. So this collection, for example, was B for binding, and it's drawing inspiration from a book binding incorporating details inspired by bojagi, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing again, the traditional Korean wrapping cloth known for its patchwork designs. And it could be used for wrapping or carrying stuff, but also as art pieces. I didn't recognize it. Maybe I'm too stupid, maybe I cannot get the references, but I couldn't recognize it. I would like to know more about that. Was these flapping, flowy pieces made using this technique? I'm not sure, but it's not the main point. What I loved a lot about this is that sometimes I had this feeling where I didn't understand if the garment is made of a continuous pattern or it's made while connected, multiple parts. I really liked the shapes, actually, the silhouettes. Also, I have never seen so many textures in 5 minutes. He had all the textures possible, and weirdly enough, everything worked perfectly together. We had everything. We had shells, we had glitter, we had pinstripe, we had this layering of solid fabric. Then we had fabric manipulation, which was very similar to Pierce. Faux fur, of course. We had fringes, we had leather, we had velvet, we had something completely new that probably they produced in-house. I have no idea, never seen anything like that before. We had quilt. Whatever texture you can think of, they probably did it. And I'm living for that. This was my biggest discovery probably 2 years ago. I saw this brand and I was like, who are you? It was amazing. Melitta Baumeister. She just breaks every fashion rule, and her clothes, nevertheless, are very marketable, I think. I don't know. Personally, I want everything. I would wear everything. If I had to choose one brand to wear until the day I die, I probably would choose Melitta Baumeister. It also questions how we wear clothes in a way, like, you know, for example, why do we have one heel for a shoe? Reasonable question. She gives us two. Why our turtleneck stops at the chin? She gives us the one that stops at the eye level, you know. I think her clothes challenges the idea of what is flattering. And funny thing, I don't actually want to name a brand, but maybe I'll find example on the internet. They adopted this wavy flared hem dress they have. That's a construction, that's a garment that comes from collection to collection with, you know, adjustments and something new. And this huge brand took this design. I was a bit pissed, but I really liked their response to that, because they were like, we are happy that, you know, this shape that is very specific, very unconventional, found a place in the, you know, the generic fashion scene. I love the irony and I love the humor they have in their collections. Yeah, I think that's a good note to stop, because that was a lot. If you have in mind any brands that would be worth mentioning, or you just want to share something new, drop all the names in the comments. I'm a curious mind, you know, curious by nature, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.
Good.